Waiting on Getter, guys. Waiting on Getter. I know you can see me. Thanks, though, Elon. I didn't like the way my hair was flapping today. So I just didn't want a tie and a vest. All right, let's see. Is Getter going now? It is always a little bit late. I can see at least one view on. There you are. All right. Hello, Getter. We're going to get right into it. All right. Laura yelled at me because I don't leave enough time for questions. So we're going to forgo the music today and forgo the beginnings and just get right into it. All right. So it is Freewheeling Friday. So Q&As, get it in there. Laura will copy and paste it and throw it in the private chat for me to look at. There's a couple things we are going to talk about today. One is, listen, there is and you may have seen Robert Barnes and others talk about this. There is a obscure law that obviously changed how the Electoral College is done in this country. And we're going to talk about that. I'm not going to play the idiot outro. I may. But since the passage of that law, there have been really two objections to electors in the Electoral College being certified. All right. All of these efforts have been led by Democrats, and we're going to get into it. Now, why is that even important? Because all of these Republicans that are throwing Trump under the bus for this, all right, are skirting the issue that this is really about criminalizing free speech. All right. This is really about challenging the outcomes of elections. And we know that has happened in the past before. All right. Mike Pence, I just got to address. And I'm going to tell a little story here. Some of you may have heard me tell this story before. This guy is the biggest snake. Look, I will always poll everybody fairly. But this guy is one of the biggest dirtbags I have ever encountered in politics. Let's rewind. A few days before the plan that the president's allies had, which many lawmakers had subscribed to, which was to object to electors from states that there were questions over the validity of the election results. There were, before the protests, a slew of senators that were signed on to this. So I think we often forget this, that this was not a plan the White House was just pushing everybody to do. There were elected Republicans in Congress who were supportive of this plan. In fact, Mike Pence himself in early January expressed support for this plan. Then fast forward a couple of weeks, and we're right up on pretty much the eve of this being done. When the protest happened, all of those electeds folded like a cheap suit. But Mike Pence folded 48 hours before, even though just before that, he said this.
And as our election contest continues, I'll make you a promise. We're going to keep fighting until every legal vote is counted. We're going to keep fighting until every illegal vote is thrown out. We're going to win Georgia. We're going to save America, and we'll never stop fighting to make America great again. You watch.
Just before that, backstage, and I know because I was there giving a speech about election irregularities in 2020. Things that you've heard me talk about before. You do not carry 18 out of the 19 bellwethers and lose elections. You don't carry certain combinations of states and lose elections. No president has ever increased the number of votes that he has earned from the prior presidential cycle and lost an election. Iowa, as white as it is highly predictive. It has the most numbers of pivot counties in the country, of any state in the country, 31 pivot counties. Yet Donald Trump held every single one of them, and yet lost the election. Things like this. And then the president gets on the phone and starts talking about the plan. 10 feet away is Mike Pence telling everybody, don't worry, I got your back. I got your back. Wait till the fiery speech. And in case anybody doubts that that's what he meant in the clip I just played, again, here he is in NPR. Ted Cruz was on it. They were all down with it. Ted Cruz and others caved when the protest happened. We all know what happened with Mike Pence. What I want to know is what changed, or what I already know what changed. You should want to know what changed. What changed for Michael Pence? Here's what I am proposing. Mike Pence was always a dirtbag. He was always a two-faced silver skunk, as Laura calls him now. It was his office who always leaked. It was his office who always gave incorrect information, out of context leaks to the Washington Post, to New York Times, to Politico, and others. While now the simps, and I don't use that derogatory term, but I'm getting tired of these people. While now the very same simps who are on Twitter all day because they apparently don't have a life, who are happy the president is being indicted for this, we're telling you to trust the plan. They were on QAnon boards. They were doing podcasts, putting the QAnon things up there. Don't worry, Q is this super secret level guy who's got this clearance, and trust the plan. And Mike Flynn is really just putting himself out there to be arrested. So, they can, use Robert Mueller as a tool, and Mueller's going to put Obama in jail, and Mueller's going to put all of these people in jail, and Andy McCabe and Jim Comey and all these other guys, they're going to jail. Trust the plan. That crew now supports DeSantis and is happy to watch Donald Trump get persecuted for this. We're going to go over the specific challenges to electors in a second. I just want to show you a reaction from Mark Levin. So I asked Daniel Street when he was on the show on Wednesday about this, and Daniel said, look, just the way it is, the Supreme Court doesn't interject normally, but if ever there was a case that the Supreme Court would interject, it would be this one. And, I've seen others do it. Barnes has talked about how unlikely it is, but if there was ever an instance, same thing, it would be this one. And then also when you're talking about the actors who are involved in this, because nothing Jack Smith said at the microphone is what he charged Donald Trump with. This is charging Donald Trump for believing the election was, or saying the election was stolen, and questioning how the election was rigged. His entire case by the law requires that he prove Donald Trump was and knowingly was lying about this. The problem is, no matter what witness he drags up there, whether it's Mark Meadows or whomever he's got planned up his sleeve, it won't erase all of the comments the president made, including today and yesterday. It's going to be very difficult to prove that the president believed that when he called Robert Barnes and said, I want to know whether or not the election was stolen. I cannot believe Joe Biden would get 81 million votes. I don't believe the country would do that. I mean, there's so many, including myself, there are so many people who can literally bear witness to the man believing wholeheartedly that there's no way the country would have ever given 81 million votes to Joe Biden. And Barnes and myself and others all responded pretty much with this. If they don't let you check the signatures, then they stole it. They never let anyone check the signatures. Jocelyn Benson refused to give us the absentee ballot affidavit requests. Georgia still to this day, even though they said we were going to scan them and put them all up, they did not and do not want you to cross-reference signatures or look whether or not the change of address flags were handled properly. Federalist just retweeted an article they did about this in 2021. They just retweeted it the other day. Anyway, Mark Levin says, after a very lengthy post, therefore, I want to publicly encourage the Trump legal team to seek an emergency hearing before the U.S. Supreme Court, not to resolve legal disputes, but to, at least temporarily, halt the abomination of this legal warfare that is unfolding in front of us, where Democrats and anti-Trump Republicans, and that's true, are unashamedly celebrating the use of the courts by the Obama administration and Democrat DAs to further their political wishes as the rest of the nation watches in shock. This unprecedented legal warfare requires an unprecedented response by the only constitutional body left that can do something about it, the Supreme Court. Jack Smith is one of few, along with his friend Andrew Weissman, who very inappropriately appears to know everything Jack Smith is doing before he does it, goes on TV, states as much, and posts it publicly on Twitter. Him and Andrew Weissman have the dubious distinction of being one of only a few federal prosecutors in the modern era to be unanimously rebuked by the Supreme Court for prosecutorial misconduct. Jack Smith and the several, actually, but in the case of Bob McDonnell is one of the most egregious ones, but there are others. There's one I even forgot about until Mike Davis brought it up that deals with an attempt to twist the Espionage Act, which is the Mar-a-Lago case. And then you have Bob McDonnell, which deals with bribery. You had John Edwards, which deals with the inappropriate handling of campaign funds. Very, very close, by the way, to the Bragg case with Alvin Bragg in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but it seems to me that this is personally me, I'm having a hard time watching the media pretend as if the Supreme Court is not going to eviscerate Jack Smith when it finally gets there. I feel like they know that, but they are just trying to interfere with the election. It doesn't really matter what the ultimate with the ultimate resolution of this case, of these cases. What are their ultimate resolution? They just don't. I feel like they know what that's going to be. They don't care. And choosing a venue for this particular, with the January 6th, choosing the venue that he did, which is one that everybody knows you cannot get a fair trial in. They are rabidly ideological, ideologically possessed. And even when half the country, a little over a year ago, when half the country thought, I don't know, this is bad, this was maybe an insurrection, and the other half saying, you nuts, they're overreacting. Still more than 90% of the population in DC that we asked and oversampled for that particular project, if you remember, those of you who have been watching a long time, over 90% said that this was an insurrection, believed every lie that the media had told and still tells. Protesters forced their way into the Capitol. They were not let in. They were let in. We know this now. Because, of course, we did that research before Tucker aired the tapes, before there was so much that has come to light since Republicans have taken over the House. They believed Donald Trump did not tell Nancy Pelosi, you need the National Guard, get the National Guard. Believed that police officers were killed by protesters. Of course, that never happened. Anyway, still, before all of that was known, it was almost universal belief that in the armed insurrection theory or narrative. In truth, every single attempt like this one to object to the outcome of an election was engineered by Democrats in the modern era, and especially since the passage of the Electoral Count Act. It was 1887, I believe. In 1969, even though they got their butts kicked by Richard Milhouse Nixon, they still objected to the electors in North Carolina. In 2004, using a ridiculous, bogus analysis of flawed exit polls, clearly flawed. They were flawed all over the country in 2004. From Florida to Iowa, all over the country. It showed John Kerry would win the state of Florida by about 1.5 points. The exit polls showed that John Kerry was going to win the state of Ohio by about 5 points. He was going to win the state of Iowa by about 3 points. Democrats, you can go back to the. I'm not going to go show the video. I had a compilation video with Tim Russert and others showing the night as it progressed, and it will look very familiar to you if you watched the election of 2016 unfold. You get the exit polls at about 3 p.m., 3:30 p.m. in the afternoon. They're not supposed to release the content of them, but you can see them all. Shit-eating grins, ear to ear. John Kerry's the president. Tim Russert's basically celebrating. You could almost hear the bubblies being popped off camera. But then as time goes on and actual results start to get reported, of course, first with Indiana and Kentucky, it's not going exactly how the exit polls show. And the mood gets more dire. Then as time goes on, by 9:30, 10:30 at night, it's full-blown despair. Full-blown, Democrats just lost every single fastest-growing excerpt in the country. And, we did get 3.5 million more Democrats out than we did in 2000. The problem is so many of them voted for the Republicans. Tim Russert's almost in tears. There's all of these talks about how he was illegitimate to begin with. How could we get here with a president being reelected? We shouldn't even be here because, in truth, Al Gore was the legitimately elected president in 2000. We all know that. So this is a very dark night for everybody. Which leads months later to Barbara Boxer and others citing those exit polls and objecting to the electors in Ohio. I'm talking about actually doing, and hold on, let me get that. I'm talking about actually doing what the Republicans wanted to do in 2020. Actually bringing these things to the floor for a vote. And they failed miserably. In 2004, I believe it was 76-11 in the Senate. Let me, you know what? Here we go. I want the actual vote from the Senate. Okay, so let's actually go back. 1969, over North Carolina. It was rejected. This is close, folks. 58-33 in the U.S. Senate and 228-170 in the House. In other words, the Democrats got 33 votes in the Senate to reject the electors in North Carolina. They got 170 votes in the House. Moving forward in 2004, and I was even wrong, it was 74-1. The objection to the electors in Ohio. Democrats lost that vote in the Senate, 74-1. That's only 75 votes, right? Exactly. Might want to think about where the rest of them were. Anyway, in the House, it did fail big, but it failed 267-31. Democrats still got 31 votes. In 2016, when they lost that election, as we all know, actually, maybe you don't. Maybe we shouldn't just skip right over 2000. Basically, in one way, shape, or form, Democrats have objected to every presidential election in the modern era that they lost. Except for Reagan's and Bush's. The more modern era, I would say, because they just got creamed. And they got creamed by Nixon, too. But, they didn't really object to those as like fraudulent or illegitimate. They just attacked white people, white Democrats, their own, as being stupid. Being too stupid to trust with something as serious as who's going to hold the power. And that's when Kennedy, during the Reagan and Bush victories, really the Reagan victories, Bush didn't win either the first time. Ronald Reagan telling the country to vote for his vice president won the election. But during the Reagan victories, that's when replacement theory, which Ted Kennedy had been pushing so vehemently, really took hold. The late Pat Goodell is obviously gone now, but he had the most damning stories to tell you if you ever sat down to talk to him about it. That's the moment when Kennedy's replacement theory took hold in the mainstream of the Democratic Party. We simply cannot trust these dumb white people. We need an underclass. And we're going to get one. But until then, what can we do? They won in the 90s after Bush lost because of the fracture of the Ross Perot coalition fracturing off a massive chunk of the Republican Party. So Bill Clinton was able to squeeze through the presidency with less than a majority of the vote. By the way, not even close. Forget about Trump getting 48 to percent to get into the White House. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about low and mid 40s. Bill Clinton was winning and won re-election. So they didn't really have complaints then. Fast forward to when his vice president, Al Gore, narrowly loses to George Bush. The Washington Post spent millions of dollars advancing the illegitimate theory to the point where they even funded a recount in an attempt to prove that Al Gore really won the state of Florida. You know what they ironically found? That George Bush won the state of Florida by a larger margin than the official vote count, even with their stupid loose standards in Miami-Dade. The upper echelon of the Washington Post was fired, and new leadership was brought in because they wasted all that money. They didn't actually object, but we all know what they said. Bush v. Gore, Supreme Court is illegitimate. The Supreme Court elected a president. We all remember that if you were alive back then. That was my very first presidential election, in fact, ladies and gentlemen. The very first one that I was able to vote in. Not to date myself. I'm 41. Who cares? That was my first one. And that's probably appropriate. Fast forward to 2004, they objected. In 2008, they won, so they didn't need to. There was reports about fraud in North Carolina, which, by the way, was later studied by, I believe, Eastern Carolina University. I believe it was ECU, which was about illegals voting that should not have voted in the state of North Carolina. It was such a close margin, but it didn't really in that state. It was a very close margin. But at the end of the day, did it really matter? McCain let it go. He didn't raise any objections. I mean, for crying out loud, he lost Indiana and almost lost the state of Missouri. Barack Obama beat him like a drum. He lost mad chunks of his own base all around the country. There were Republicans who wanted to vote for Barack Obama. They, especially after George Bush left the party in ruins, they wanted to vote for him. They wanted him to be successful. They wanted that moment of history. So McCain didn't do anything about it. He let it go. Much like how Nixon let it go when everybody knows that Democrats robbed the presidency for JFK. Now, I look back fondly on JFK, but most people will tell you he did not win that election. Nixon let it go. Later, Nixon, in a landslide victory, will have to deal with Democrats objecting to electors in that very state we were just talking about, North Carolina. It would have been the equivalent politically if McCain would have challenged the margin in North Carolina. It would have been the equivalent of Democrats in 1969 challenging the electors in the state of North Carolina, even though it would not have changed the outcome of the election. They still did it. They still attempted to do it. Not Republicans. 2004 would have changed the outcome. In 2004, George Bush barely won re-election. 0.7 of a percentage point in the state of Iowa re-elected George W. Bush. That's it. He won states like Florida fairly comfortably. At the end of the day, he won Ohio by about 3 points. Little over 2, I believe, maybe something like that. He lost New Hampshire, which he had won in 2000 against Al Gore. He did lose it. So we needed something else, and Iowa was that something else. If the objections to Ohio would have been successful, John Kerry would have been president. So, in fact,
Democrats did seek to overturn the outcome of a presidential election. Didn't they? That failed. It didn't work. So they moved on to bigger and better things in 2016. When they were totally taken off guard and Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton, they said, we're going to do everything under the sun and more. Everything we've done in the past and more. We're going to try to pressure the Electoral College delegates. We're going to have celebrities do 5-minute public service announcements going on and on about, you need to do the right thing. You need to take a stand. Because why? John Sikowitz just wrote a fantastic article on People's Pundit Daily, which we published on People's Pundit Daily, about the mentality that allowed Russia collusion to fester. They couldn't believe that they long believed the math was there for them. And especially nobody like Donald Trump would be able to overcome this demographic advantage that they have in the Electoral College and elsewhere across the country. So something had to explain this, because it could not possibly have legitimately happened. I can't let myself think like that. Otherwise, my entire world collapses. So it must have been something sinister. And the Clinton campaign colluding along with the DNC and the federal government they presented them the answer that they so desperately needed. Donald Trump was a traitor. He colluded with Vladimir Putin, and they stole the election together. Putin used the tools at his disposal as the president of our adversary, Russia. They were hacking power grids and voting machines and all sorts of crazy stuff going on. They had bots and they had algorithms. They had fake news websites promoting people. They had fake polls. Then all this stuff going on. Yes, that's it. That explains it. And if that wasn't bad enough, let's get the FBI. Let's get the Department of Justice. Let's get them all involved, because we can't let this stand. Not only does this explain it, but now he's a traitor. And now we need to prosecute him and stop him by all means necessary. And what happened is that Democrats abandoned the constitutional framework to object to an election that they don't agree with. They had every right to question whether or not the elections in 1968, 2000, 2004, they had every right to question their validity, every right to look into it if they wanted to, every right to raise an objection. Is it healthy? No, but they have a right to do it. And every Democrat had a right to believe that George W. Bush stole the election with his brother in Florida against Al Gore. Is it true? No. But you have a right to believe it and state it and profess it. The FBI and the Justice Department have no right to wage a coup against the president that was duly elected, whom they do not agree with. The Democratic Party had every right to raise their concerns about how Donald Trump was able to beat Hillary Clinton against all the odds. What they did not have a right to do was conspire with the corrupt federal government to engage in a coup. Folks, what they did is a coup. It's just not a military coup. It's an administrative coup. They abandoned the vehicles, the channels that the Constitution provides that they had exercised in the past, and instead went straight for sedition. And now anyone who questions those methods is going to be thrown in jail. That's what this indictment is really about. In the modern era, Democrats are the ones overwhelmingly who have questioned the outcomes of elections. I played part of a 12-minute montage the other day from 16 of people telling in one way or another publicly that Donald Trump is illegitimate and did not win the election legitimately. Somebody in response sent me another video. It's over 25 minutes long. There's literally hundreds of felonies according to Jack Smith's interpretation of the law. Donald Trump had every right to investigate and challenge the outcome of the election, as long as he did it through the constitutional framework. And also, what you don't have a right to do is take away the power that is vested in the legislatures to decide how elections are going to be conducted in this country. You cannot, and it doesn't matter what the crisis is. I don't care if there's a war, there's a pandemic, there's an economic collapse. It doesn't matter. The Constitution is not suspended for your own benefit or the benefit of a party's ability to get in power. That's what they did in 2020. So they just took this to a whole new level. And if you have the audacity to question why Clark County put a moratorium on their own ban on ballot harvesting, all of these things, Michigan, Wisconsin, special counsel in the state of Wisconsin identified just under actually 200,000 ballots that were cast in a way that is contrary to the law in this state. Gretchen Whitmer and Jocelyn Benson did not have the authority with universal mail-in vote. Well, not even. I mean, unsolicited mail-in ballots. They did not have the authority to do that on their own. Local election supervisors in Wisconsin did not have the authority to change whether or not COVID is a legitimate reason to claim indefinitely confined status. Even Republicans in Georgia, they did not have the right to really expand unsolicited mail-in voting. Only the legislature had the right to do that. But you better say that now, because if Jack Smith gets his way and Democrats get their way, you won't be able to challenge any of this. They'll make whatever changes they want before an election, which won't even be a real election, and you will not have the right or the ability to question them. Because if you do, you will be charged under the same legal theory that Jack Smith is charging Donald Trump. All right, it's 12:30. Wanted to look at some polls. Get your, if you have questions regarding this topic or any other, throw them in the comment section. Laura will grab them and throw them in the private chat. Although I know she is busy. We're having some family, and I know she's running around like a nutcase trying to get it done. But I could always go back myself and get them. But I do know she's been yelling at me for not making sure that I have enough time to answer as many questions as possible on a Friday, which is why, because I'm like, Lord, stop throwing in the questions on a Monday and Wednesday. Like, stop it. And she's like, no, you didn't answer. No. All right. So also, as you guys can see, we have to talk about real quick. We got to talk about the public polling project. We had a nice little boost. We're at almost 60% funded. Thank you guys for all that. Don't forget, even if you're anonymous, there's a perfect example right there. Even if you want to remain anonymous, you can still leave me a comment. It says, let's do the national. Thank you for all you do. And Laura rocks. She does rock. Absolutely. But great example. You can still leave me a comment or a suggestion, even if you want to be anonymous. There's a perfect example. We are going to ask a few questions. We're going to talk about the primary, of course. We're going to do national, of course. But I do intend to we can't have a bunch, all right? By the way, of course, help us get us to the finish line on the public polling project. Share it far and wide. If everyone gave it $1 every month, then we'd be able to poll every month. You know the deal, all right? Publicly funded, public opinion, all right? When I was on with Eric Hunley and Mark Robert last week on Freewheeling Friday, they suggested asking questions that we start started to ask some things along these lines, a year and a half ago, but then ultimately, didn't continue with it. But because we are where we are, what he really wants to know is whether or not, like in the next public polling project, whether we should ask a series of questions that are very uncomfortable, without a doubt. They'll have to come, by the way, after we do the, all the ballot questions, all the approvals, all of that. It would have to come after so we don't taint the survey. But here's a few of them that he suggested. And let me see if I don't want to. Yeah, there's no way to do it. I don't want to risk showing anybody some DM that others don't want to see. So here's a couple that Mark sent to me. If you're a Biden supporter, as a Biden supporter, how far are you willing to go to ensure his reelection? And then add different response choices. And we had talked about this. Would you fill in an absentee ballot fraudulently? Would you do this? Would you do that? I'm gonna get a look. I gotta dig into this. It's gonna take me a little bit of time because it is so sensitive. I need to make sure that I am satisfied with how I am asking these questions, and they're not crazy. But here's a great one. Is violence an option for you to achieve your political goals? Or, for you politically, but I get what he means. Will you use the race card against your opponent, even though he or she is not a racist? Why is the Ukraine war different from the Vietnam War? How far are you willing to go to win the Ukraine war, even if it means World War III? Do you believe any of the charges against Joe Biden being levied by Republicans? Do we need a media bill of rights to ensure truth in journalism? Should Trump's trials be pushed back to after the election in the spirit of fairness and to avoid allegations of election interference? That one I love. Should Trump be in jail already based on what you know? Listen, let me stop for a second. There was something that I saw from somebody that made me think these questions were absolutely not only appropriate, because I like to keep stuff out of my election surveys, but not only appropriate, but we needed to start to ask because there were some comments made by One More Thing segment with Jesse Waters. And let's see if I can actually find that real quick. What she basically said, they were like, are you okay with these prosecutions of Trump? And they said, this woman they were asking specifically said, yeah. And then, they said, well, why don't you just beat him at the ballot box? And she basically said, I don't think Joe Biden can get the votes again. So she was perfectly okay with prosecuting Donald Trump because she didn't think that Biden could beat him again this time. Scary stuff. Really scary stuff. Let's see. I mean, I don't want to hold you. I'll look during the commercial break. But I think there are more people who hold these views than we want to admit to ourselves. And I would like to see if there's a way we could do it. You can't hit them all at once with that kind of an honest question because they'll just lie to you. But I feel like there is a way to do this. Is Obama involved in the Biden administration? If so, how much? 5, 20, 50, 75, 100%? Like how much impact? How much say do you think he has in? If you did what Hunter Biden is alleged to have done, would you be in jail already? Was the Russia hoax a hoax? Really, you would have to say, was Russia collusion a hoax? Should the New York Times return the Pulitzer Prize for their coverage of the Russia hoax, if indeed it was a hoax? Should Adam Schiff be indicted for publicly lying about secret intel he read behind closed doors? Do you believe Trump is a racist? Is hate speech protected by the First Amendment? I love that one. How do you define hate speech? Should saying I don't think I can say that. I don't think I could say that, Mark. Is Israel a rogue state? Is climate change going to end the earth in 20 years, if not abated immediately? What price limit should we put on climate change abatement, if any? Should electric cars be mandatory? Should we ban gas stoves and gas water heaters immediately? Should wealthy people be allowed to fly in private jets if they are fighting climate change? Should there be a racial quota in football and basketball at the professional level? Should there be a limit on the amount of Asian students in American colleges if it affects African Americans negatively? If Trump is found guilty of treason, should he be executed? I love that one. I know it sounds horrible. Some of these other things I'm just reading to you because they're what he suggested. And I thought, especially since a lot of you watched me on that show, you may want to know some of the things he wound up sending back. But I'm sticking to the more political of this, right? How far are you willing to go to prevent MAGA Republicans from regaining power? A, protest. B, go to jail. C, break the law. D, commit acts of violence. E, all the above. I like that. And of course, we're going to ask about the Republican nomination. Can Trump defeat Biden if he's in jail? Ooh, it's a good one. Should Biden be impeached? You know, it's funny. Rasmussen came out with a poll just this morning and it showed the appetite for impeachment actually declined. Weird, right? Have you noticed the climate getting warmer or colder in the past 10 years or both? Should robbery of a store by minorities be punishable by the law, or do they deserve the items they are taking? That refers to the CNN story. Should black Americans receive reparation for slavery? If so, how much? And then there's different ones. Should interfering with a robbery in your place of work be criminalized? Again, there's a lot of this stuff, but we're almost done, so let's continue reading them all. How do you define equity? A, everyone should make the same amount of money. B, no one should be above another. C, all people are equal. D, everyone should be hired for any available job despite race, creed, or color. And E, none of the above. Everyone should probably pick none of the above if they understood what it really meant, but they would. Should all drugs be legalized? If so, if not, which ones? Heroines, methamphetamines, hallucinations, fentanyl. By the way, MDMA is really very close to being approved for medical use for treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder and a bunch of other stuff, depression and anxiety stuff. Are MAGA people evil, or are they just misinformed? And then at the same time, we could ask others, we could ask the right what they think about certain leftists. Would you give up your seat on a bus to an old black woman, an old white woman, both or neither? This is some of the stuff we actually do ask with some of these other surveys we do about morality and whether or not we want someone to be able to make an opinion for a jury. So this is a little bit different, but can men give birth? Should there be Tampax in boys' bathrooms in high schools for trans boys to use? I can't read the rest of this. I mean, Mark is out of control, but you get the point he's trying to make. Should my goodness. Should overweight people be shamed to help them with their weight problem, or should it never be mentioned? If your friend smells bad, should you tell them? If so, how? Listen, those who know me, you know where I'm coming from. I'll tell you off the bat, if you stink, you're going to piss me off, and I'm going to say something to you. I am that guy. You know why? Because I'm not the one being rude. You're the one being rude. You're offending me. Now, everyone can stink once in a while. You go to the gym, you're doing something, right? I mean, it's just normal. But if you're that guy, and then everyone's always afraid to say something, not me. Get your stank ass in the shower and use deodorant. That's me. You're offending me. I don't even want to eat around you. I'm that guy. I'm mean as hell when it comes to that. Laura will tell you, mean as hell. I'm talking about in civilized settings. Like I'm talking about it. I don't want to go to the restaurant and have some dude 2 tables over who just completely reeks. Like I'm going to say something. I am that guy. Now, if we're out fishing, if we're out hiking, if we're out doing something like that's totally different. But do not let me cross you in the mall if you stink. Because I'm going to say something. I'm that guy. I'm just that guy. All right. 12:45. Real quick before we go, and this way we leave plenty of time for questions. I do just want to bring up, we have yet another Rust Belt poll. I think it's kind of funny that we're not seeing the comparisons anymore to other candidates. Maybe it's coming soon and we just don't know. But yesterday you may have saw a poll that DeSantis supporters were happy to throw around. It was from, actually, I wasn't very familiar with the pollster, but it was in Virginia. It showed Youngkin a few points ahead of Joe Biden, Trump only a few points behind, 3 in Virginia, and DeSantis like 1 or 2 points ahead. Let me just say this very clearly. If you think that Virginia is up for grabs and you're voting on Virginia, you're an idiot. You're not going to get Virginia and just somehow run through the Rust Belt as well. You're more likely going to trade the Rust Belt and a certain loss for Virginia. Or you're going to get Virginia and you're going to trade the state of Virginia, even if you were to get it, for an almost certain loss, because Glenn Youngkin cannot carry the Rust Belt. I'm sorry, folks. It's like, if you really believe this still, if this hasn't sunk into your tiny little head about why traditional Republicans cannot win the Rust Belt, then I honestly cannot help you. I would simply tell you this. Go on some pilgrimage to different areas in Michigan and in Pennsylvania. Drive all over Western Pennsylvania. Drive all over Northeastern Pennsylvania. Go and see these people. Talk to these people. Go to their events. Go to their towns. Go to Michigan. Go to Macomb County, Michigan, and go to the working class suburbs and talk to people about why they continue to vote for Democrats unless Donald Trump is on the ballot. Ask the people of Monroe County why they are so supportive of Donald Trump, yet do not vote Republican. Do your worst. Go and talk to people instead of talking to people. Act people. Even worse. Let's bring up the new Michigan poll. Let me take a second here. Give me 2 seconds. You may have noticed that you see my comment there. On the right, let's start with the right. Very much like the Mitchell Research poll. Very much like other Rust Belt polls at this point, whether it's Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio. Trump is in the 60s. Nobody's even close. Let me just really quickly read you the rules for the state of Michigan, by the way. Presidential nomination schedule, pulling it up. Hold on, folks. And it was cool that he asked about the primary. Like, do you care what day it's on? Interestingly, Republicans did not give a damn. But it is weird on how they do it. We have it listed as February 27th right now. There's going to be 10 at large out of 55 total delegates. They're bound to the statewide winner of the primary. Then there's a caucus that conducts a presidential preference poll to allocate 39 district delegates on March 2nd. Republicans didn't really seem to care about the dates of their primaries. They just didn't care. Democrats did. Right, but and I'll read that to you in a second. But 3 district delegates per district are bound to the winner of each district. 3 bonus delegates are to be allocated, and as of now, that is unclear. This is a winner-take-most hybrid system, even though it's on February 27th. And by the way, you're welcome for California. You're welcome. Anyway, the bottom line is here, all of these like delegate projections I'm seeing are actually way too favorable to both DeSantis and others below him on how many. There must be projecting that they're going to get to some thresholds, or they're not appearing to, like, as the polls are now, this is who would get what delegates. They're not appearing to reflect that. They're reflecting, I guess, what they're making assumptions on what vote would end up being allocated to, to who. Because as of right now, in a state like Michigan, for instance, very, very few, if any, delegates appear to be allocated to anybody else. Trump is way ahead everywhere. They're not even, there's not even a single congressional district that appears to be competitive at this point. Trump is way ahead in the northern, more conservative congressional districts. He's in the 60s. And then if you even go down to the suburbs of Detroit, where you would think there's an opening. DeSantis and others moved to the right on Trump in an effort to compete in Iowa, and they have thoroughly turned off the educated voters in like Oakland County. So even in those areas, Trump is way ahead. And interestingly, in the Senate races, you may see that Republicans against Alyssa Slotkin, which is why it was so important. I told you, stupid consultant class Republicans years ago, after Slotkin won that seat in 2018, that if you did not rally behind Mike Dittmer, Paul Young was going to lose to her because he was never going to claw back enough votes from the educated vote in Oakland. And it was all about bringing Livingston out in droves. Yes, Dittmer was a little bit rough around the edges, to say the least. But he was the only one who was going to pull out that many votes in Livingston County. And if you didn't get rid of her, she was going to be a real long-term problem for you. The little Holly princess. I'm from Holly. Don't look at me as a failed spook who ruins every foreign policy task force I've ever been on. Don't think of me like that. I'm just a little hometown girl from Holly. I was raised on a farm. Idiots. Instead, Kevin McCarthy gets his pack to help Paul Young, who, by the way, only made it on Young Guns because his friends gave him money from California as loans, his friends and family, and himself. I think he gave himself $200,000. He barely beats Dittmer, who spent $42,000 in a primary. Barely beats Mike Dittmer. And then goes on to get his ass kicked anyway. Why? Because he didn't get enough votes out in Livingston. Exactly what I said. And now she is beating every potential Republican candidate who could run for Senate in the state of Michigan. Even if Trump was to win in Michigan, which this poll shows he very clearly can, he's the only one who can. Mitchell Research, it very much backs up what Mitchell Research has, which is that he gets a vote no other Republican gets. There are Trump Slotkin ticket splitters. Yeah, you heard me right. There are voters in Macomb, in Oakland, in Monroe, all over the southeastern part of the state who say, I would vote for Donald Trump over Joe Biden, but I am voting for Alyssa Slotkin over the Republican for Senate. Trump is actually ahead in the Detroit suburbs. Why? Because I was just talking about what are the suburbs of Detroit. Macomb County. Go, if you're a Locals fan right now, go to the content playlist, dig up the voter analysis in Macomb County, and you will see that it is majority inferred Democrat. That's why Tudor Dixon lost it. Michigan is not competitive unless Donald J. Trump is the nominee. If you put him head-to-head against Biden and then just someone else, the generic third-party choice, they're tied at 44 points, and Trump is ahead in the Detroit suburbs by 8 points. If you put him against Cornel West and then someone else, which is the likely ballot, Democrats are doing their damnedest to keep the Green Party and Libertarian parties and other third parties off the ballot in all of these Rust Belt states. They are focusing right now on the Rust Belt, but they will move around as they can. Right now, for them, their problem is that Joe Biden cannot get to 50% in Michigan, Pennsylvania, or Wisconsin. He's going to lose Iowa and Ohio straight up to Donald Trump by a lot. But they need to keep Cornel West. They need to keep the Green Party. They need to keep the Libertarian Party off the ballot. Otherwise, Trump is going to win these states. Michigan is the one state where I would have said before, that one is probably the heaviest lift for Donald Trump. I underestimated him in 2020. It was much closer than I expected it was going to be. So I won't underestimate him again. What do you need, sweetheart?
Oh, I was just in it to win it. Sorry.
Oh, you were in it. You need this? You want this? Yeah. But the bottom line is, Laura had the electorate in Michigan model D+3. That's the only reason why we had Biden up that much.
Actually, I remember that day very specifically, and you kept going back and forth. You're like, I don't know. I think so.
Republicans, Republicans
Maybe.
more likely,
Maybe
more
we should
likely.
go back. Maybe we should. I remember that day. You were.
I just felt
right
like
there.
we were very close. We were very close. I think we overestimated Biden by like a half a point, but you know how that pisses me off if I do that. And the electorate was R+1. It wasn't D+3 or D+2 or whatever we had it. I'd have to go back and look. But this electorate is dead even in the Emerson poll. It's dead even. Yet I'm going to bring up some of these. Where are I must have exited out. Oh, no, I didn't. I did not exit out. Hold on. Let's get rid of this one. No, I'm going to read these margins. I'm going to explain to people the difference in his vote share because it's not just, oh, well, they don't know some of these other Republicans. No, Alyssa Slotkin earns more of the vote than than Joe Biden does, meaning they do know who these people are. They do know who they are. They're voting against them. Interestingly, voter fraud, when asked, which of the following, if any, presents the greatest threat to elections in your view? About 40% said voter fraud. Only 28% said suppression of individuals from voting. Only 11% said there was no threat. Voting machines got 6%. So the right has the argument in Michigan about election irregularities. The right has it, not the left. That was interesting to me. Anyway, let's go back to the head-to-heads. Where are you? Okay. In the Detroit suburbs, for instance, John Tuddy only has 39.8% of the vote. Alyssa Slotkin, 42.2%. James Craig does lead Slotkin by 0.6 of a percentage point in the Detroit suburbs. All right. Then we get to Mike Rogers, who is, I think, probably one of the strongest candidates, even though you may not particularly like. He's a little bit more, probably a little bit more war hawk than they used. Mike Rogers represented that district, by the way. It's different now. It's been obviously redrawn, but when Dittmer was running, we were just talking about Paul Young. That was his district. Anyway, 42.9% in the Detroit suburbs would back Mike Rogers. 39.4% would back Alyssa Slotkin. Nikki Snyder has no chance. I'm telling you right now. 39% Detroit suburbs, 40. Nikki Snyder ran in Michigan 8 against Alyssa Slotkin. She didn't even come anywhere. She had basically dropped out of the race before. I mean, she didn't, formally, but she was not a force to be reckoned with. It was basically Paul Young and Mike Dittmer. And if it wasn't for two other candidates drawing some of the votes out of Livingston away from Dittmer, Dittmer would have beat Paul Young. And then Dittmer, much to the chagrin of Republican consultants, some of the things he had said after were not known yet. So he really hadn't hurt himself as much, with the general electorate, because he wound up getting killed in the state legislative race later. And that's because he had made comments that were just crazy, folks. They were nuts. I constantly told Mike, you speak out of your ass, bro. You speak before you think. And it was a major problem for Mike Dittmer. By the time he got to run for the state legislative seat, he was done. But at this point, had he won the nomination, not Paul Young, he would have beaten Alyssa Slotkin. All right, so Nikki Snyder was like a nothing burger, and I don't see how she would be competitive against Alyssa Slotkin right now. All right, Peter Meyer, who John Gibbs defeated and then went on to lose to Hillary Shotkin anyway. They're about tied in the Detroit suburbs at 39, okay? Let's move on to Trump. Trump is ahead in the Detroit suburbs, well ahead of every other Republican. Joe Biden is right around where Alyssa Slotkin is, depending on who she's facing. Biden's a little bit less at 38.3. Trump's at 47. He's damn near touching 50. He's doing as well in the Detroit suburbs as he's doing in the southwest of Michigan, the entire region. which is more conservative, folks. In the North, Trump leads Biden 58-30. I'm rounding. In Southwest, he leads Biden 48-32. And in the Detroit city, the urban area, Wayne County, you know the deal, Biden leads 57-29. Telling you, that's a pretty good urban performance for Trump. That is no joke. All right, well, I'm reading from the XLS here, so that's why I just left that up there for now. But this is now the second poll in the state of Michigan showing that he is much more competitive. And I'm telling you, I don't see it. I just don't see it. Because if we went and we looked at, and maybe we'll do that after the break. If we look at, the unfortunate result of Michigan for Republicans, unfortunate for Republicans, Tudor Dixon actually got a ton of votes. More than Schneider, sitting Governor Schneider did. Unfortunately, it was not enough because Whitmer got more. And at the end of the day, Tudor she did not win these Trumpy areas. Okay. She just, got crushed in typical Democratic areas. Still lost Macomb by 23. Oakland by 23 points and wound up losing Macomb by about 4 points. Trump wins Macomb. He wins it overwhelmingly. Even in Monroe, where Tudor Dixon did win, she only won it at 55.5 to 42.7. So Trump outperforms Republicans in areas like Monroe, but then he also wins Saginaw. He wins Macomb. He wins all these others. We went over that. Go check out the last week's episode of the Rust Belt. What did we call it? The Republicans Rust Belt reality check. Go check it out, and that'll explain it a lot more. And we spoke, we stuck to Ohio, but the look, folks. The damn thing is so evident everywhere. We all know the difference between Republican performances, traditional Republicans versus Donald Trump. It's a reality. They would have done real well to accept, 8 years ago at this point, and brought them into the fold. And they didn't. So now here they are. All right, let's take a real quick break. When we come back, we'll take some questions. Look, folks, authorities fear extremists are targeting the U.S. power grid. That's according to Time magazine. If just 9 key substations were to go down, it would knock out power across the country for up to 18 months. And forget about extremism there. Weather, there's incompetence. That's why you need a solar generator. The new Patriot Power Generator 2000X is portable, but it's still powerful enough for your phones, even medical devices, and your refrigerator. Right now, you can go to 4patriots.com and you can get one for 10% off if you use the promo code TPP10 at checkout. This code is for your first purchase only. Works for everything, but it's for your first purchase only, so make it count. Again, that's 4patriots.com. Use the promo code TPP10 to get your Patriot Power Generator today. And let me just say this. There are tons of great deals with the panels right now. Speaking of Michigan, before we go, let me tell you about a great deal our friends from Jam and Bean. Patriot owned, but also absolutely 100% artists in their craft. Whether you are someone who likes freshly roasted coffee that you want to grind yourself, or you're in a time crunch like me sometimes, and you need to get a K-cup, K-pod, and be on your way. Jam and Bean has a flavor for everyone. What they also have is the only, and I've tried them all, the only truly full-bodied medium K-cup. And I am a bold kind of guy, like dark roasts. Their medium is delicious, and it's a real full-bodied medium roast, unlike this crap you get in the supermarket. It's just not. It's dark roast diluted. They figured out how to do it. They figured out the science behind it because they put the R&D into it and they put the time into it and they got it, and it shows. If you go right now to jamandbean.com and use the promo code TPP40 at checkout on any new subscription for coffee, their delicious gourmet popcorn, you will get 40% off your initial subscription right then and there, and yet still get that 10% off for being a People's Pundit viewer, watcher, on every subsequent renewal automatically. So just go sign up, use the code TPP40, Get 40% off today, right now, and still every month when it renews, you'll get that 10%. It's a fantastic deal. Great guys, Jam and Bean. They know what they're doing. That's for darn sure. And of course, send Laura and I your feedback because we love to hear it. Let me just bring this up to drive the point home before we hit questions. Here's the 2022 governor's race. Why does this matter? Look, overall, folks, the truth be told, primary polls at this point are highly predictive. Okay, highly predictive. Even this early. General election polls, not so much. But you can still look inside the numbers, get it? See what I did there? And draw out trends that matter, things that matter. You can spot what we used to call mood of the electorate indicators years ago, right? Trump or bust voters, a lack of motivation. What issues are most important and who seems to have the electorate on their side with those issues? Who underperforms in what areas and why? That stuff is predictive and it does matter, and you can see it right now. Here is Gretchen Whitmer. One of the biggest misses for the alternative polling industry was the state of Michigan in 2022. We did not poll it, but others did, and they had a very close race. One of them, if I remember correctly, even had Tudor pulling slightly ahead. Most of them, were showing that it was a much closer race. She got blown out, man. Blown out. 10-point win for Gretchen Whitmer, and that was it. Why? If you look, here's Monroe, like I said, underperformance compared to others like Donald Trump. Even in Lenawee, Hillsdale did well, Jackson, that's an underperformance. Ingham County got crushed. Eaton County, not bad, but still. Clinton lost it. That's a problem. And where there's Livingston, by the way, was only 55.6 to 42.8. Livingston, the suburbs of Oakland are stretching to the west. Livingston was once very, very, very conservative base, especially with traditional kind of Republicans. And, Whitmer had no money. This is it's only fair to her to state that her campaign is one of the campaigns Republicans had that were sabotaged by their own people. The Ricketts, little boy Rickett, the former governor of Arizona. They did this on purpose. They didn't want these people to win. They didn't want Trump to have allies in battleground states that were key to winning or losing the Electoral College. Why don't you help Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania? I sat down with him. Everybody really liked Doug. Thought he was a great guy. They said, sorry, you're a Trump ally and you're not our kind of guy. We're not helping you. That's what happened. Anyway, you look at Wayne, typical blowout margin. Oakland, typical blowout margin. Here's the problem. This is a red flag. So, and actually it's 5. I said about 4 points. It's 5 points. When you lose Macomb County, you're done. As a Republican, you are finished. It's not going to, there's no chance. And as I tried to explain, these are the Detroit suburbs that we were just talking about. All right. From Monroe up to Macomb, even hell, yes, Oakland. Is you have Wayne, you have Wayne County, that's to the south of Macomb, obviously. But between the northern part of Macomb, which is a little bit more, not a little bit, more Republican, between that area, folks, you have areas like Warren in southern Macomb. And this is very, very Democratic, or Democratic working, I would say. That was the heart of the Reagan Democrat that people have been talking about forever. Republicans claim that that's who they want to appeal to. They have always claimed that. The autopsy in 2012 highlighted this very voter alongside Hispanic voters as a key demographic group that Republicans needed to win back if they ever had hope to win the presidency again. If you canvass those neighborhoods between Wayne County and northern Macomb, which is more Republican, even northwestern Macomb, you canvass those areas, you will find out that those are Trump voters who hate the Republican Party. They will never vote for Tim Scott. They will never vote for Ron DeSantis, they won't vote for any of them. I actually agree. Or I don't agree. I actually find it believable that Mike Rogers is doing a little bit better there than some of the other potential Senate candidates, even though he still lags Donald Trump by about 4 points in that area. I believe that. I mean, he's kind of that kind of guy. So I'll buy that for $1 is my point. But generally, the overall takeaway is that this is where most Republicans will end up in Macomb. And if that's the case, then they simply have no way to win that state. No chance. It's not going to happen. Pipe dream. All right, Laura, let's get to some of our questions. I saw somebody say, can Rich poll the North Carolina governor and attorney general? I would love to poll the North Carolina race. I really would. Everyone wants us to poll right now nationally. And then I was thinking of doing Florida after, but very confident polling North Carolina. I've been doing it for a while now. I don't think I have a single miss in that state in my whole entire career. I don't want to jinx myself, but I don't think we do. And I would love to. It is a little bit early, so, we could add the general election matchups. That'd be cool. Of course, we could do primaries. That would be cool. I just think that folks, I don't know. I got to come up with some ideas on how we're going to fund these polls better. Like, I don't know. In 2020, we just didn't have a problem funding any of these battleground states. We just didn't. Laura just said something in the other room that I think is probably worth sharing. People had more money. Like, this is a publicly funded project. People had more money in 2020 when Trump was still president. They had more disposable income. So it's very possible that we need to figure. I just don't want to take money from like bigger people, like bigger donors or something. Like, I don't want to do that, even though it's still public and their name would be public. Or their contribution would be public. I don't want one person to pay for an entire survey. I've had people give me big chunks to pay for an entire survey. But somebody else always contributed to it. $5 here, $5 there from maybe 50 people. I don't want that to become the public polling project. But I understand what you're saying. I do. Adam, maybe we'll just blow up so much on locals that's going to be the case. I hope that's the case. We have so much planned for not only this year, before the end of this year, but next year is going to be huge. It's going to be huge. So maybe we will get there. Let's see. All right. So Adam, so you mean to tell me that Trump conspired to obstruct the very proceeding he hoped would resolve his election claims? I asked Daniel Street about this on Wednesday. It doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense. And Adam, they're going to have to prove with the state of mind that he knew he was lying. This is ridiculous. It's the twisting of the legal theories, even though I'm not a lawyer, ridiculous enough on their face to me. But these indictments, these stupid clapping seals on CNN and MSNBC, you're the ones, which was the point in the entire segment, Adam, in the beginning of the show. They're the ones who have used these objection tools in the past, not Republicans. But it seems to me they don't even care anymore because they feel they don't need those. They didn't work for them. That process didn't work for them. So instead, they're just going to move on now to using the power of the administrative state to rig elections for them. And if, God forbid, somebody sneaks through it, well, they'll just prosecute them and engage in administrative coups. They got away with it. This is the problem. They got away with the coup they waged that we commonly refer to as the Russia collusion hoax. It was more than a hoax. It was a coup. They attempted to convince the public to give Democrats the Senate. So if they couldn't prosecute them and couldn't make the case in court, which they couldn't, and they didn't. That's why they didn't. Then at the very least, they could use the House and the Senate to get rid of the guy. But Trump went out there and defended himself. He rallied for Braun. He rallied for Howley. He rallied for Rick Scott. and they didn't get it. And so, yeah, Adam, I mean, it just simply doesn't make sense. But everyone needs to look at the bigger picture anyway. Do you or do you not want to pick your own leaders? Do you want a slate of empty suits that have been approved by the administrative state for you to choose from? That's not America. That's not self-governance even. Foreign policy should be ashamed of themselves. Actually, democracies have prosecuted their leaders before. Disgusting. They prosecuted them for things like taking bribes from hostile foreign nations, selling U.S. policy for money. However, the current president is the one who did that, not the former president. Imagine if Hunter Biden was Don Jr. and Joe Biden was Donald Trump. They would actually be hanging him for treason. They want to hang him right now. They want to give him the death penalty right now. And by the way, they wanted to kill George Bush too. How quickly we all forget. Slate ran an op-ed that George Bush should be tried at The Hague for war crimes and charged with crimes that carry the death penalty. Gunface 11. And thank you for all of your contributions. By the way, I do not mention this enough before I answer Gunface's question. If you want to contribute, the best way, or if you want to support us, the best way is to give us either a Rumble rant or to just subscribe on Locals. Just join the Locals community, okay? Because YouTube takes out a ton of your money. 33 to 40-something%, depending on what avenue you're going. So you're really contributing quite a bit to YouTube. All right. So I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying if you can do it the other way, do it. Or save your money and contribute to the Public Polling Project. Give that $10 to the Public Polling Project. Give that $50 to the Public Polling Project. All right. Locals, you have your tip jars already. That's cool. That's cool. That's what it goes to anyway. I'll just be honest. So when we don't make the cut, that's where it's coming from. That and subscriptions to Locals. How do you think we've been doing that? So you guys are all right. But I just don't want you guys to give 33 to 42% of what you're contributing to YouTube. Do you think this would have happened if the Supreme Court would have actually taken up the Texas versus Pennsylvania case? And if they had, do you think it would lead to the federalization of elections? That's a really good question. I don't think if the Supreme Court would have taken up Cuccinelli's, oh my God, I'm so sorry, Ken. I did not mean to mix you in with Coochie. Ken Paxton is obviously. If they would have taken up Ken's case, then if any of these for that matter, any of these court cases would have been heard on the merits, obviously would have made it much harder for Jack Smith. By the way, I've got to say this again. I can't believe I'm having to respond to DeSantis' supporters now using this disinformation. Trump never had his case heard in court. Never. Trump's own team never got their day in court. That is a left-wing talking point. I'm really, really, really disgusted watching DeSantis supporters use it themselves. And if they had, do you think it would have led to the federalization of elections? No, because in that case specifically, what they were saying is you did not have the right to ignore your own constitutions. And because this is what people need to understand about what happened in 2020. The constitutions very clearly give the power to set elections, to conduct elections, to make laws pertaining to elections are very clearly given to the state legislatures. Executive powers, whether it was governors, secretaries of states, supervisors of elections, boards of elections, depending on what you call your local entities in your state, ignored the authority vested clearly in the legislature, and they changed codified law or put moratoriums on them, which is how I like to explain it to people a lot. They put moratoriums on existing election laws. Okay, let's go back to this. Me screaming at the top of my head because his question is a really good question. We should worry about opening the door to allow these nutcases to federalize elections when very clearly the Constitution says the powers for the legislature. Now they say all other things though go to the feds, so. And that's, well, they don't say that. That's what modern day executive power fanatics want you to think. All right. But this is what I was screaming at the top of my lungs before I think was like March before the election in 2020. This is what they intended to do. One, everyone gets a ballot. And in order to do this, they needed to either change, ignore, or put moratoriums on existing state laws. It's important for a lot of you to understand out there, if you're not living in these states, you did not live in these states, maybe you don't realize this. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, they didn't do early voting before COVID. Forget about absentee ballots, expanding absentee ballots. They didn't do early voting at all. Barely at all was anyone allowed to cast a vote through absentee ballot voting. Pennsylvania, Michigan, none of them adopted the early vote culture. These were election day voting states. Many times, Democrats attempted to introduce early voting to these states and turn them both into Minnesota, for instance. And every time they were rejected through the traditional democratic processes, the legislature. Now, you could have just made sure Democrats were elected to the state legislatures and Democratic governors signed over those election reforms. That was the constitutional legal way to make these changes. They did not. They failed every attempt they tried. So when COVID came, they saw their opportunity, and this was the framework. One, everyone gets a ballot. In prior years, ballots must be requested, and inactive voters must update their info before that ballot goes out. Even the dead, change of address flags, and other inactive voters received ballot requests. Or ballots, not just requests. They may have gotten the ballots themselves. And in fact, that's California. That's Macomb County, Michigan. We were just talking about. I have hundreds of these photos sent to me from people when we were doing these shows, showing me you're exactly right. Those were official ballots. And then the other photo was ballot requests. If you think Donald Trump is a Nazi and he's evil, are you really doing anything wrong if you send in those ballots? If you return those requests? Are you really thinking that you're doing something illegal? Or are you the good guy in this story after everything that was told to you? Hell, somebody thought killing congressmen was patriotic because, after all, they were enabling the traitor in the White House. Rachel Maddow told him so. Countless elected Democrats told him so. Adam Schiff told him so. Elizabeth Warren told him millions of Americans would die if these enablers were allowed to continue their work. He believed it. So he shot Steve Scalise. 2, remove the verification procedures and integrity deadlines. Democrats did not want signature match or other verification standards often required by state law, nor deadlines for reporting the number of total ballots. The suspension of verification procedures, especially as it relates to absentee ballots in 2020, was a gross abuse of power. And again, we've had judges from Wisconsin to Michigan and elsewhere now say, well, that was illegal. You couldn't do that. It was too damn late. They never took the case on their standing when it happened. You don't have standing. We can't hear this on the merit yet. The election hasn't happened yet. Then when the election happens, it's, oh, well, it's too damn late. They already done it. I'm not overturning the election. The system is broken to be able to challenge this kind of thing. I just mentioned one before. The state of Nevada banned ballot harvesting. Yet, Clark County not only decided they were going to put a moratorium on that rule, they used taxpayer funds to be able to get the infrastructure necessary to be able to deal with it. $330,000 first payment alone. 3, ballot harvesting. In states where ballot harvesting is illegal, Democrats wanted third parties to retrieve ballots, even to use tax dollars to fund harvest drop boxes, and the U.S. Postal Service acted as their substitutes. And then we found out later, the Zuck Bucks. And this is a victory for Matt Brainerd's association, the very clear 14th Amendment violating, by the way, equal protection violating, placement of drop boxes in liberal areas. Only. So all of that happened. I know that was a long way for your question, but the bottom line is they were dealing with stuff of that nature. And because those challenges were dealing with challenging their authority to do that, which was very clearly vested in the legislature, I wasn't worried about those cases opening the door to federalization. Now, something like H.R. 1, that's concerned me. And it was killed, but it should never have been contemplated to begin with. It's been long enough. What was the burger both of you and JD Vance ordered when you were in Texas? Oh God, let me think. JD and I both got, you're talking about that place, that famous place in Texas. Both JD Vance and I ordered the
smash burger place.
What's it called?
I don't remember what it was called, but they served smash burgers.
Text John. He'll get it. John knows. Text John. Yeah, she'll get it. And John had just been with JD Vance the day before, and the waitress waited on him, and she was like, you and JD Vance, you both get the same burger. I have to get it, but it was like a very believe me, there are some like weird burgers, weird burger ideas. I'm sure they're all delicious, but as far as I guess JD Vance and I go, it's like blue cheese, and that's as far as we'll go on burgers. I just like I'm old school like that. No, nothing too fancy for me. Just make sure it's delicious and juicy. I'll get you the name of it. All right. She's going to ask right now. I'm interested in learning more about the fall of Rome and some of the similarities between then and what is happening in the U.S. today. Are there any books you might recommend? Oh my goodness. I would rather not recommend that. I would rather recommend that you read some of the pamphlets of the founders who used the Roman example to persuade other colonists to break away from England, because that actually is, I think, more illuminating than some of the more modern books today. There are a lot of people make those comparisons, and I personally like to read, the founders and their takes on it. That's a good question, though, Nicholas. There's nothing other than those primary sources that I would really recommend first. Everybody else is just going to give you a summary on their ideas anyway. Would you ask Republican primary voters which news sources they listen to? Well, ask all voters what news sources they listen to. In fact, I was looking at that New York Times poll. We used to do the same thing, and I was thinking if the survey's not too big, we're going to do that again for the national. That's a great question. That's Elon, right? No, that was SW2205. This is Elon for locals. When, if at any time, would we expect the polls for the general to see Trump getting over the 50% mark? It seems like the polls I look at show it's 44-44. I don't think you're going to see anybody over the 50% mark, not legitimately anyway. I think the third party vote is going to be much bigger this time. But I don't think Biden will maybe get above them in polling, but I don't think he's going to get what he got, folks, in 2020. That's not going to happen. He's going to fall. Could Trump get 50 or more? He could, because even if 10% of Biden's voters, now say they'd switch to Trump, and then you have to take away 2% of Trump's that say they'd go to Biden, then you're looking at about an 8% negative or net shift. That does put Trump, because you have to deal with their third party taking some of the overall vote. That does put Trump just above 50%. I just think it's going to be tough. I do. And I will notice, though, with that, for instance, I guess you're citing that New York Times. There's a major problem, Elon. I'm not sure you heard this the other day, but there's a major problem with how Nate got Trump to, I think it was 48, right? It was like Biden 50, Trump 48. The major problem is that he assumed your vote by party in 2022 would dictate your vote for president. And that's just not true. Trump and we're seeing it now in the Emerson College poll. Trump outperformed every single Republican candidate on every level, whether it was the congressional generic candidate or a named congressional candidate, or statewide, a gubernatorial candidate versus a Senate candidate. I mean, he was outperforming everyone everywhere. So the miscalculation, it's just incorrect assumptions that Nate made in the New York Times poll, that would put Trump at just about 50 if he did account for the but it would also put Biden at like 48 point something. We were playing around with it. Yes, it was yesterday. So it's very close. Still very close. People always say to me, how the hell could it still be that close? Why is it in the low 30s? Why is it in the low 40s? Excuse me. That's just the way it is. And to give you a more specific answer, most of the time when we were doing tracking polls, we would start before the 4th of July weekend. And I'm telling you, Elon, it would start over like the August period. That's when you would start to see the undecideds and the third party shrink. And then throughout September and October, it would just solidify where they were. So August, just before Labor Day. I'm not kidding. And then that's not even the full extent of it. It's just that's when you'll start to see that really happening. Other polls that swing wild back and forth. Candidate A 52, candidate B 47. That's bullshit. Just bullshit. It's not real. Those are response biases, participation biases. That's it. Rich, while Trump may have the sole authority to eliminate any of the three-letter agencies, does he have the sole authority to rename them? Could he rename the Federal Bureau of Investigation to the female body inspectors? Red Diver. Come on, man. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. But I'm telling you, the Office of Management and Budget has tremendous amount of power. The OPM, they have a tremendous amount of power. You could dismantle these puppies. You could. I don't care what anybody says. You absolutely could. I've watched Democrats basically hollow out the halls of NASA. I've watched, without congressional authority, certainly could do that. I don't know if you can change it, though. That's a good question. I don't know. I just don't know the answer to that. Remind on Monday. We'll have Barnes. What are the odds? It's on Monday. Isn't it, Laura, this coming Monday? Remind me on Monday to ask Barnes that. Right?
So far, so good. Waiting just to make sure, I like to triple, quadruple check and make sure he is good. Because you never know when a case might pop up.
That's true. You ever get the answer to that question about the burger from John O'Shea? He'll know.
Not yet, but wasn't your burger spicy?
I don't remember. I thought JD and I both got the blue cheese thing.
Oh no, yours wasn't. Mine was. I got a crazy burger. Which
I didn't want like the raspberry vinaigrette thing or something. I'm like, no. I want a burger, but I'll take the blue cheese or something.
And that guacamole there is to die for too. Oh man.
My God, it was so good.
John made me an addict of that place, and I can't even remember the name of it. It's like notorious
Hold
in
on.
Texas. Not notorious.
No, it's famous.
Famous in Texas. And don't mind
There's
Roman.
Roro.
Roman thought so too, see, apparently. Yeah, see? He's telling you it's good.
Hold on. What was the name of that burger joint?
You're
And
asking him right now.
do you remember the burger I got? Or JD and I got, I assume. Let's see. He's gonna remember the burger place. I don't know if he'll remember the name of the burger itself.
But isn't it called like
I'll tell you
JD
what, if
Vance
I get the name
burger?
of the place, I'll look up the menu and I'll be able to tell right away
But
what
I
the
thought
burger
it
is.
said JD Vance's name by it. Did it not?
No, the waitress just said that's what JD
Oh
got.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, and John was like, "It is," because John was with him. So, thoughts on opportunities in Illinois for GOP? Yes. As a matter of fact, I do. Let's go to my trusty dusty little map here. That's a great question. So I don't know if he's going to run. I don't know what he's going to do yet. But I will tell you this. Hold on. Let me get my. I got to make sure I don't show something. It is possible that where is it? Jerry Evans runs again for Illinois 11, and if he does, last time Republicans, what's it called? They nominated I forgot Catalina something. What was her name? I'm trying to find it. It's in this conglomerate. If I zoom in, I'll be able to do it better. Hold on. Since suburbs outside of Chicago area, Catalina. What was there she is. Catalina Loft in District 11. Republicans grossly underperformed here. Catalina was like, I don't know, taking pictures. She's pretty. She's a very pretty girl. She's a hot girl. But you're running for Congress. You don't take pictures of yourself like in like dresses like draped over kitchen tables. Like, no, if I'm not trying to be a dick here. I'm being real. You got to be more serious of a person. And no family story, no nothing. You don't act like a pretty, you don't act like a pretty single woman like that. Like that doesn't work for Republicans. And she got absolutely crushed in areas where I'm telling you, we did the voter analysis of the area and everything. I mean, it's barely a Democratic district. It's like D plus 3 to 5. Whether or not it depends how you calculate your PVIs, bottom line. And I'm looking at it through our modeling, very close to what like even Cook has. There's no reason Catalina should have performed that poorly outside of she was not even in the district really campaigning. And she was like, I'm a pretty girl. Look at me. I'm serious. And I'm not, again, trying to be like a chauvinist here, but it was not a serious campaign. And she got crushed among those like, you want to know how you can really piss off suburban women? Like constantly show how much prettier you are than some of them. Come on. Laura's laughing hysterically in the other room, but I'm being for real here. Look at me. Look at how attractive I am. Look at how pretty I am. You should vote for me because you're jealous. What kind of stupidity is that? It's not serious. Jerry is a married guy, Christian to the core, more traditional conservative appeal, without scaring away or just flatly upsetting some of these, high income conservative educated women. And they're not just like the conservative. They're not just the educated suburban woman. That's not there. That's a different constituency and one that's not coming back. But I'm saying Catalina even lost Republican women. It was a gross underperformance. Gross. And that's one of them. That's top target right now. It's a really good question. I also think if Republicans weren't as stupid as they are, going back to 2016, if they would have embraced Trump and they would have embraced Trumpism and they would not have handled themselves the way they have handled themselves over the last 6 years or so, Illinois would be closer. Illinois would be, oh, Rich, how could you say that? Just do me a favor. Go compare Trump's margin and his total vote in the Chicago area from 2016 to 2020. I'd say I'd wait, but I got too many questions. Go do it on your own. In 2016, Republicans would have loved a vote share like that. But because they turned off other people in this constant fight, made their own party look stupid. Only all at the expense. I don't, you know what? I'm sounding like I'm beating a dead horse here. We all know what I'm talking about. As the statute of limitations has run out on Dems in the Russia collusion stuff, could someone raise a charge against the 52 intel officers who hunted Biden's laptop letter using Trump charges? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, Neil, but I will tell you this. I mean, politically speaking, this is what I'm talking about when people are like, oh, he beat Biden, beat him, and he'll beat him again. Like, Democrats don't believe that. The shine is off Biden. The credibility that surrounds these agencies are gone. Like, I just don't see. And by the way, there's way too much time for, like, did you see Hunter Biden's? Oh my God. Did you see Tucker Carlson's interview with Devin Archer? Devin came across as a likable guy, a very relatable guy, and he just spilt. Even in areas he thought he was being coy with Tucker. Tucker coaxed information out of him that made the Bidens look awful. As of right now, let me just look and see how many people have watched that interview. Okay? Hold on. It's got to be huge. It's over an hour. You should definitely watch it. It so far has... Let me click on the actual tweet. 1.1 million views. The entire interview. Or no, that's part 2. Excuse me. Part 1 has 26.9 million views. Whoa. He comes across as very likable. And I just don't. And if people think, I know, wait, I'm going to get crap for saying that. Hold on. Bear with me, folks. Because I don't want you to think I'm blowing smoke here. I'm not. Devin is and by the way, he's got a very similar story to you and I, Laura, only you and I grew up in more difficult places. But if you listen to the whole episode 1, you get his background, where he's from. I just don't see them having the ability anymore to keep that information away from the American voter. I just think that the American voter is going to be too, there's just too much time and too many alternative vehicles of information, that information is carried on. They're not going to be able to block it out. Listen, I'll give it about a minute or two. Listen to Devin Archer, and you tell me whether or not he doesn't come across as credible or even, dare I say, likable.
So you worked with Hunter Biden in a bunch of different businesses. What were the specific skills that he brought to clients?
Well, at the end of the day, he had a career in Washington.
Yeah.
Graduated Yale Law School and had a very big network in DC, and brought that know-how and understanding of DC and ultimately the Biden brand.
The know-how. So as far as I could tell, he wasn't doing legal work. I mean, he wasn't in the counsel's office at Burisma, right?
No.
So the network and the Biden brand sounds like the kind of key component of
absolutely
what he was bringing.
Yep.
Do you think that he would have been in those businesses, not having a business background, without his father being in a government position?
It's hard to speculate in those regards. I mean,
yeah.
I think when we initially met and he talked about his advisory business, his business that needed to transition from lobbying to advisory, and the interest in private equity, it seemed like a new and interesting network for us to expand our business. Whether he could have, been in that position, it's hard for me to speculate. But obviously, the brand of Biden, adds a lot of power when your dad's vice president.
Oh, that one sounded particularly damning. Listen, he comes across. I'll look for your answer in the comments. He comes across different than Tony Bobulinski to me. Both very different guys, obviously, but he comes across as very credible, very believable, even though he's somebody who's going to jail. The bottom line is I just don't see how they're going to keep this out of the public eye like they did in 2020, banning the New York Post, taking all of these, anyone who referred to the New York Post stories on Facebook, getting banned themselves. That's not going to happen this time.
So I'll just leave it at that. And I don't want to read. I'm going to do the whole interview, but you should go and you should watch the interview and judge for yourself. The shine is off Biden. It's off. It's gone. And by the way, Emerson never had Trump tied with Biden in Michigan. Never. There's no R. This is 1911 Republic. There is no R that wins Virginia in 2024. No, there's not. The federal bureaucrats own Nova. Yes. Which dominates in a presidential election. The reason Youngkin beat McAuliffe, principally, is that McAuliffe ran an unending ads calling Youngkin Trump. So McAuliffe drove up turnout in the rest of Virginia, Rova, while depressing D's in Nova, who knew Youngkin was no Trump. Hence, Youngkin is a squeaker cause of the rest of Virginia. That won't work in 2024. I tend to agree with you. I think Trump could get close. I don't think many others would get close. I think at the end of the day, they're going to get blown out like Romney got blown out. All right. Like Willard got blown out. Remember Alex Castellanos? Oh, I'm putting Virginia in the toss-up category because Romney isn't like a Santorum. He's not like a Newt Gingrich. He's not scary. Okay. Romney got crushed. And then the next question is, can you pull North Carolina? Yeah, and wait a minute. Let's just stop for a second. Go back. The stupidity that it takes to risk losing the Rust Belt for a potential candidate, a candidate who's potentially competitive in Virginia, is like terminal stupidity. That is death sentence stupidity level stuff. Let's give up the entire Rust Belt. Let's give up 50 plus electoral votes with the hope we may win the state of Virginia. Stop. Just stop. People that stupid shouldn't be on social media talking about politics. Shouldn't be talking about politics at all, let alone on television. Just stop. What rules did California end up with? I didn't see anything about that, whether they changed the rules or not. Bottom line, at the end of the day, California, I'd have to pull up the PDF and show you, but California ended up largely keeping the rules because they didn't need to change their rules. Now, they do have a winner-take-all provision now with thresholds, minimum and max. That minimum I'm talking about to even be qualifying, but also it used to be that you could still win in the district level delegates and a winner-take-all kind of situation, but now there is a way that you could trigger the entire winner-take-all threshold. So you take it all. You just take it all. 169 gone. So it ended up being if you're a Trump supporter, looking at the polls now, what you wanted. So, by the way, it only did because if you want to know who to thank, if you're a Trump supporter and you want to know who to thank for this, it certainly isn't Harmeet Dillon. She reacted. She was going along with Jessica Patterson's idea. Whether she was doing it on purpose or not is irrelevant. Laura Loomer, David Giglio are the ones who preserved that. And yes, I obviously played my own role, being the guy who knows the rules and knows delegate math and allocation. I'm the one they went to say, hey, look, explain this to people. Trump's own campaign was twisted up over this. They didn't know. Brian Jack misled them. Dick Morris, who they just hired, told Peter Navarro in an interview on War Room that it didn't really matter. It's not that big of a deal. Only if it's close will it matter. When I heard Dick Morris's interview with Peter Navarro, I was stunned. Like, this is who the Trump campaign is hiring? You've got to be joking. He doesn't appear to understand the situation at all. And that's not good. So you're welcome. Go thank Laura Loomer and David Giglio. Where are we at? We've done Minnesota quite a bit. Of course, we'll talk about it again in the future, but we have done entire shows on Minnesota. We'll see how it plays out.
Is there a single Republican in the state of Michigan that can beat Slotkin? As of right now, there's two-part answer to that. There is. It will be tough, very tough. But it also matters whether or not certain people can convince certain donors to undertake a plan that they have to get low propensity voters who vote for Trump on the permanent mail-in ballot list and to get them into the fold for Republicans. If they don't, they don't. But there are, and believe me, because I know they came to me asking me, can you give us these numbers? There is more than enough low propensity and non-participating eligible voters that profile as Republicans to overtake not only Biden's margin, but to have made the election between Whitmer and Tudor Dixon more competitive. There is the number of voters that we identified alone that these people want to get signed up and active and in support of Trump. And really, it would have to be Trump because a lot of these voters, they're just not, they share values with Republicans, but they just don't trust Republicans. This is the problem. They don't like them, right? That number exceeds Joe Biden's margin by, let me just look, make sure. All right, bring it up. Any day now. There we go. Okay, so I want to say it's almost threefold, but give me a second here. Yeah, it's about threefold. So Joe Biden won by about 150,000 votes. It's more than threefold, actually. Oh yeah, it's about 4.5 fold. They're there. Just so people understand, there is about 7 million eligible, because there's really about 8 eligible, about 7 million eligible records in the state of Michigan. The total number of votes in 2020 was about 5.5 million, over 5.54 million, ballpark. And there's really about 760,000 people, I kid you not, who are eligible. I don't want to give away too much here, who are eligible and profile as likely Trump voters, likely Trump supporters. This is why I can't stand when I hear like Republicans bitch. You can't beat the steal, can't beat the cheat. Yeah, you can. You just need to use your money more wisely. You just need to be more sophisticated. And you need to get over this identity crisis. Because as long as you stay mired in this identity crisis, they're never going to trust you or believe you. And Trump is not going to be around forever. And once he's gone, they're going to be gone. And they'll disappear again. How much does it cost for a poll? That's a great question. It depends on the state. Nationally, it really does depend on the mode you use. We have the form up for like 8,000 for a national poll, but anybody will tell you that that is not covering a national poll. I just do that because, and by the way, once upon a time it was 6 and we tried to keep it down. But if you use an online component, there's no way in a presidential election that I can simply do like one mode. We like mixed modes. And let me say it like this. You can go as low as like $5 per complete, depending on the mode, which I don't really like. And then you can go as high as like $25 per complete with like a live caller. It's a lot. And it depends on the state, a congressional poll, anywhere between like 10 to 13,000, something like that. That's congressional level. State polling, depends on the state. Georgia, for instance, is a big state. Florida, it's a big state. It's a lot of money. And you can answer that question yourself. Go into the FEC records and look at how much candidates are paying for polling, right? Most congressional candidates pay anywhere between, 12 and 13,000, something like that per, district level poll. Presidential campaigns pay a lot more, 30,000, stuff like, if they want a good national poll or if they want a good solid battleground poll, you're looking at like 25, 30 grand. It's a lot. It's a lot of people like, what? Well, yeah, if you want a large sample. The morning console, things like that. They're using online panels. So you can keep the cost down a lot like that. if you have a legit online panel. But even then, for instance, I just had a conference call this morning. Data appends on online samples costs more money. So what do I mean by that? YouGov is a consumer poll. You can go to SurveyMonkey and pay $3 per response if you wanted to do a national poll, if you have the right account with SurveyMonkey. But you have no idea who those people are. Those are consumer panels. Reuters, by the way, their Ipsos poll constantly using consumer panels, right? And then they'll say, oh, no, we have registered voters now. Okay, right, sure. The only way to know that for sure is if you data append to the voter file, which will double the cost per complete. So if you are getting a good deal because you're buying or you're looking for like 2,000 to 4,000 completes, you're going to get a discount. But that only matters when you go to append anyway. It's going to double the cost per complete, which will ultimately make it just the amount as the discount anyway. So again, it can cost a lot. It's a lot. We are able to keep, I don't know if I want to say that, but if pollsters train their own people and don't need to contract out call centers and their employees are multi-capable or multi-skilled employees, like we've had, then you don't necessarily need to pay $25 per complete because your employee is already being paid for the role they're serving. They're just also trained as interviewers. And so there's, obviously it depends on how much you pay your employees. If you want it done right, you'll pay them well. But farming it out to call centers, what most people do, and they're paying a lot. Now, Emerson at Spencer, at Emerson College, for instance, a lot of them are training kids, how to poll. So a lot of them, Monmouth, you can look at their methodology. They farmed it out to Dynata and others. But others, like Emerson, they got their own interviewers there. So they're able to do it with grant money for a lot less because they have, classrooms of kids who are learning statistics or learning, math for the liberal arts, whatever, or political science. And they have like some minor in this and they'll do it, for their own education. I thought Monmouth was like that myself as well. And I think at one point it was. But now you notice Quinnipiac, Monmouth, they're farming out a lot of these times. So much for giving kids an opportunity to learn the trade themselves. Great. Yep. Snow Mammy got 4 ballots in Illinois. Yep. We've had tons of pictures from Illinois. And by the way, even Florida. One of those pictures we used to show off, that's Don. When he lived in Florida. That was Don. Somebody else lived at that address. He got 4 ballots or 5 ballots or something just at his address in Jacksonville. Or he got 4 ballot requests, right? And before then, that's ridiculous because you weren't supposed to be able to do that. Dan, are we settled on a book yet? No. On Sunday, Dan, we're going to talk. All right. We're just going to have a conversation on book club on Sunday. That's a great question.
Not this Sunday.
It is this Sunday.
Oh.
Yeah.
Elon.
They're going to have to wait. I'm talking about this Sunday is book club. There's no week. Am I missing some weekend? Am I missing some holiday or something? Oh, Elon won't be there. That's right. But we could still we're not reading. We could still discuss. I planned on using book club on Sunday to discuss which papers we're going to go over because we're going to go over. I have some topics, Dan, that we have outlined from the Federalist Papers instead of just picking up I have Federalist Papers, but I don't want to much of them we can just get for free. So I planned on using, I know there's nobody who had time to even get a new book and didn't even know what to get, but instead of putting it up on locals and doing what we talked about last, I was just going to use this meeting to discuss it with everybody. We just got done reading The Ideological Origins of the American Revolution. And because so much toward the end was geared toward, not toward the end, at the end of the book, so much that chapter on fulfillment had to do with how the founders were going to reconcile putting together this new government after just rebelling against something so similar. So that led to what did the anti-federalists warn about? And so much of it is so prescient. It's right now, you can actually see it. It came to fruition. And we discussed a lot of the Federalist Papers, even though, by the way, the questions surrounding the Federalist Papers and what we were discussing, the Federalist Papers are not the most exhaustive work. But there it is. It's the most known. So I think it's worth going over and dealing with these issues now, because we're going to have to move on to more election related material really soon. Guys, the Iowa caucuses are going to be here before you know it. They will. So we got to get this done and out of the way. Historian Garen Willis' biography on George Washington and Cincinnatus is excellent, covering the Roman Republic and American Republic topic. He wrote for Buckley at National Review. Thank you, Blondie. Cool. Angie, what's going on with Feinstein? Determined to die in office or uncertainty regarding a replacement? Probably both. He's got like a 22% approval rating. These people are just disgusting. They need to learn how to hang it up and go. Let me do a little speed thing here so we can get through it. Do you think this would have happened and the Supreme Court would have actually... Oh, you already went over that. But how did I miss some of these? Laura, you're doubling up some of the questions. Need paper ballots, no electronic machines. I understand that, and do that state by state. It's going to take some convincing with people. Have we put together a big get out the vote? We're Neil, believe me, we're on it. We're not paying for it our damn selves. So, these people want to spend money on beating Donald Trump. So it's a little hard to do that. We just addressed, I was just kind of alluding to something like that in Michigan. We'll see. What is the best way to donate to, and in your case, you're asking about Donald Trump, his website. Any candidate, I would donate directly to the candidate. And then if you max out to the candidate, you have to find the right pack. But I don't like WinRed. I think Donald Trump is, though, connected with them. Hold on one second. Give me 1 second. Let me just check. I don't like it. I don't think he needs them. But let's see. I'm picking something just to make this a recurring or whatever. It's irrelevant. Is it WinRed? I don't think it is. Doesn't look like it is. Oh yeah, it's powered by WinRed. Oh, it's still any campaign. WinRed is. You can't just say it's bogus in and of itself. It depends how candidates are using WinRed. But, what their agreement is with, for me, it's a sharing operation. So I don't particularly like it. But in the end of the day, the best way to give to a candidate, if you don't like WinRed, you could always write them a check and send them a check. And just make sure you're giving it right to their campaign. You guys have got to be, everyone's got to be more careful on who they're giving money to, not just you guys. My audience is smarter than the average bear. But a lot of people think they're buying like merchandise from Donald Trump, and they're buying it from these grifters who have all this Trump merchandise. Everything has to be the candidate's specific website. Okay. If you're redirected from their website to something else, that's different. And then you could always give to a pack that you like from them, but why would you not just give to their campaign first, especially if you're a low dollar contributor? What's considered maximum turnout for a presidential election, and how does 2020 compare to the historical norms? Ridiculous. 2020 was unprecedented. Nothing before ever in the history has come close. Normal turnout is in the 60s, low 60s for a presidential election. An election like 2016 was a high turnout election. 2020 was ridiculous. Unprecedented, never heard of before, never heard of. I don't know how else to put it. Mitt Romney and Barack Obama were 120 million, each receiving around 60 million votes. That's it. I mean, of course, Barack Obama beat him, but I'm saying it's like around 120 million. 2016 was about 100, just under 140 million. That was already a big deal. 2020 was almost 160 million. It was crazy. There are over 200 million records on a voter file. There are, but they don't vote. And many of the records are bogus. Millions of them are bogus, as you guys know. I don't have to explain that to most of you who've been watching forever. They're not real. 100% turnout is not worth it. I mean, it's not possible. Excuse me. It's just not. So I think this year we're going to see ridiculous. I think the administrative state would kill people to stay in power at this point. I think we're going to see a ridiculously high turnout. Can McCarthy be primaried? He has too much money. There are people who are constantly calling candidates, trying to get people to primary Kevin McCarthy because they will raise money nationally and they'll be able to stick that money in their own pocket. But the truth of the matter is, at this point, until he trips and falls, he cannot be primaried yet. He can be, but the person that I have in mind that I think could beat him, she won't do it. And I'm just leaving it at that. Mitch can be primaried and removed. Donald Trump saved him last time. One of the biggest mistakes he made was trying to work with some of these SOBs, and Mitch could have easily been beaten. If 45 is removed from the ballot, how many write-ins will he get? Tens of millions at this point. I really believe that. 10 million write-in votes at least. I do. I believe that. Additionally, if this happens, how big will the Electoral College win be for the Democrats? Huge. And will the GOP go the way of the Whigs? Yes. People think like history doesn't change. Certain institutions or even countries are exempt from history and the laws of nature and nature's God. They're not. Republicans are threading a needle. Or better yet, they are walking on very thin ice. Much better example. They're this close from destroying themselves as a national political force. This close. What do you think of Zeldin as the VP? I'd love to see Vance, but he just got into office. I would not remove Vance from that seat. Lake UC is toxic. She seems she can't win the Senate seat either. Actually, she's the strongest Republican in that. Whether you're looking at the internal polling from the Democrats or the Republicans, Lake is right now the only one who can win. Mark Lamb's getting killed. It would be close though, because Arizona's going to be close. What do I think of Zeldin? I just think that Lee would get more votes maybe from New York. So what? You're not going to get the Electoral College from New York. I really think Ron Johnson is a smart VP kind of pick. I love Byron Donalds, so like so many others, but Florida's not competitive. Trump is ahead in Florida by 11 points right now. Florida's not close. Trump is killing it. He's carrying Miami-Dade with almost high 50s. It's over. Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson in North Carolina. He's running for governor. So I just don't. I mean, a Johnson makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of good ideas. There are, but I like Zeldin. I do. I like the idea of Zeldin. I think he may be a little too early for Lee Zeldin, and he's not going to help you with some of these must-win states. Because let me let you in on a little secret. Trump could lose Arizona and still win. He could lose Georgia and still win. Or he could win Arizona and Georgia and just pluck off Wisconsin and still win. He runs the table. I mean, look at Michigan. Guys, this is second poll now. That state's close. Contrary to what I thought it would be hard for Trump to win Michigan, especially with the new absentee ballot laws. But the fact of the matter is, they're ticket splitters. There are Trump Slotkin voters, a lot more than I thought. And that's now the second poll showing that. Not one, but two. DeSantis loses by 13. Which, by the way, think about all the public polls that have come out in Pennsylvania, in Michigan. This guy's getting crushed in Pennsylvania and in Michigan, but his fake pollster comes out with a -2 in Minnesota. Shame. Talk about me. Anytime somebody tries to, you're banned by 538. How is your record compared to mine? What did you have in Minnesota in 2016 and 2020? What was your results? Let's compare them to mine, shall we? What did you have in Iowa and Ohio in 2016 and 2020? Let's compare to mine. What did you have in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin in 2016 and 2020? Let's compare them to mine.
It's
You
actually a
should be
good thing.
ashamed of yourself. What, Laura?
I was just saying that it's actually a good thing because to be included in that batch of specialness, we'll say, I'll be kind, would make you kind
Right.
of look bad.
That's right. And Rasmussen is actually pissed that they caved and didn't ban them. They wanted to be banned with me.
I know.
They wanted to be banned with me. I kid you not. Mark, all the guys, I'm not going to get into it. They were like, damn, man, they caved. I was trying to get that as a badge of honor. You know?
You remember when I said you should write them a letter? I was like, please write him a letter and
Yeah.
say, I want your crosstabs. I want your answers.
Yeah, that's another thing. Where are your crosstabs? Where are your crosstabs? This is like, I don't never understood this in my life. I just never understood this. What the ability to put this stuff out and be taken seriously when you don't even put out how you did the poll, what your crosstabs are. Like, what the hell? By the way, this has been going around. This is hilarious. I've got to show this to people, Laura. Let me see if there's a large version of it. I think there is. Let me get the large version. This has been going around Twitter. It's too funny. Too funny. And I know we're over on time, but hold on. Let me just show this. I see your Schwartz is way smaller than mine. Never releases crosstabs, doesn't show mythology, got 2020 way wrong, small sample sizes, can't even manufacture a poll with their own candidate in the lead, funded by Rove, the Bushes, the Ryans, and uses propaganda by Fox News. Then you have me, does deep dives in his polls on live stream, full transparency, releases the crosstabs for free for everybody to see. Outstanding track record in 14, 16, 18, 20, and 22. Although I will say they smear the 22 record because I didn't have final polls in all of those states. And I'm really pissed about Pennsylvania. I really am. I've never missed the state of Pennsylvania before. Oz should have won that race. He screwed up because Republicans are dumb. Still, and not Oz, but Republicans overall are stupid. The RGA cost him. Their inability to understand how modern elections are won cost him. There was so many Republican votes left on the table. Oz should be the senator from Pennsylvania right now, and he's not because of it. Still more friendly to DeSantis than other polls. Blacklisted by 538 and MSM for being too accurate. You gotta love that, Laura. That is hilarious stuff. I love
That's
it.
epic.
It's epic. I love you guys.
love it.
I love you guys. I'm like watching this thing make its rounds all weekend long, and then somebody DM'd it to me like, "You see this?" And I'm like, "Oh my!" Well, I see it now, you know. But apparently it had been going around for a while. Let's see. That's Zelda. Oh, we're almost there. A librarian. Please add a write-in option to your "What will you do if your guy doesn't get nominated?" question. I think I'm not alone in being a 1 Trump, 2 Kennedy, 3 write-in Trump voter, and I'm a suburban Utah Mormon female. Wow. Thank you for that suggestion. I like that idea a lot.
I'm surprised. I like reading.
I like that idea, Laura.
That's
I like that idea. I'm thinking about which way I want to do it because there's 2 ways you could do it. You could just add it, or you could, when people say they're undecided or I don't know, or I may not vote or whatever, then you could redirect them knowing that they could be part of that write-in and ask them, would you write in your first choice? Because if you add it to the other part, it's possible they'll just say, it's possible we'll get like way too few support. No, because if we add it to the question she's saying, then we're not going to get that. We're not going to get lower levels of support for the candidates.
Yeah, but we could also make it into a drop down, Richard. Like once they choose.
Yeah, I know.
You know
I know what you're going to say. I smell what you're cooking. I like this idea a lot, Laura. Remind me about this. I want to, you know what?
She's a suburban Utah Mormon female, and I like how she votes.
I like this a lot. Would you just write in your first choice? Wow, I like this. What a good. Hold on. That's Iowa. God, man. That's the public polling project for summer. Oh, that's this. The one I started to build. Okay. Let me see the next page over. What do we have on this so far? I haven't changed it yet, and I need to. Okay, so we asked that in Iowa and Pennsylvania, right? Or Iowa and Florida, excuse me. I expanded it then, right? Yep, here it is. So I would vote for the inevitable party nominee. I would consider voting for the other party's nominee. I would consider voting for the third party nominee. I would not vote at all. Between third party and I would not vote at all, I would write in my first choice. I like that. I like that a lot. That's a good damn suggestion. Thank you for that, librarian. Many people criticize RFK for his support of Israel. When did the Dems shift their ideology to the side of Israel ceasing to exist? Dr. Mimo. Most of the heaviest shifts came under the Obama administration, and Obama even interfered with Israeli elections on many occasions. And then when he was out of office, his people did, trying to sabotage the Likud. The bottom line is there has always been this anti-Israel strain that ran through the Democratic Party. Excuse me. You had the left-wingers in inner cities, the Farrakhan's, the Black Nation, those elements of the Democratic Party, I keep saying Republican, were always bigger than than comparable elements to the Republicans that you may think people get a lot of attention with them too in mainstream media. Reform Party people were viewed as anti-Semitic. KKK, right? Spencer and what's the other guy? David Duke. They bring up every election. And so anybody gives a damn about David Duke. They were always dwarfed by this element that's in the Democratic Party that is comprised of straight up anti-Semitic and racist elements combined with like these self-loathing secular left-wing Jews that like hate themselves and hate Israel and hate faithful Jews. And they have always been a big chunk of the Democratic Party. They just were very good at lying. Al Gore was very good at lying and pretending that he was pro-Israel. So was Bill Clinton, but yet he took Yasser Arafat's side all the time, right? And Arafat was a nut. So it's always been there. They just lied. It's like one of those things during the Trump era, the pre-Trump era, the Obama-Trump eras, then like they've been unmasked. But they've always been there. Always. The truth is they've been there since as early as the 40s and definitely in the 60s. If liberals in America had their way, we would have the same position on Israel's right to exist as a state than Great Britain and some of these other so-called allies of ours. These European powers meddled in that part of the world, not us. And then, by the way, that's how we got in Vietnam, the French. And then they just pass their problems off to us while they get to pretend they're the human rights supporters. So we support Palestine. We support the Palestinians, the British, government's position really is. Even though they're the ones who made the damn problem. They made the problem in the West Bank, in Gaza. The French made the problem in Vietnam and that part of the Golden Triangle. But they're just so damn weak, failed, once great empires, they passed it all off to us. Left us with their pile. If it was up to the racist Democrats in the Anglo-American relationship, the Roosevelts and the Woodrow Wilsons, we would never have supported Israel's right to exist. That's the truth. That is the truth. You wouldn't even have an atom bomb if it wasn't for the Republican Party. I'm not kidding. Nixon was like, turn a blind eye. Oh, Mr. President, they're building an atom bomb. They're buying materials from shady characters. Turn a blind eye. Let them build a bomb. I'm not kidding. Democrats were like, they don't have a right to be there. They never believed that. All right, that's a great question. That's the last question. Oh man, 2:20. We got family coming, and I got to get myself together. Oh, yeah. Anyway, don't forget, join the People's Pundit Locals community. If you did subscribe like the day after, I did tell people if you just missed the cutoff, I don't know if they can do it, but I'm okay with you telling them that I said it's all right. I just don't know if it's possible. If you missed the cutoff, I don't know, but support at locals.com. Ask them if there's any way. But we are beyond that cutoff now, so it's still though the time to join. People ask me, what do you get from it? Election coverage, polls early, voter analysis models nobody ever gets. Oh, one word of note on locals. I stopped answering the chats. I don't know if some people have reached out to me. I've been told it's being deprecated. So just as I turned on that option, I did not know it was ever there. Now it's being deprecated. So the direct messages on locals won't be there forever. I'm just telling you guys. So that's why I took it away. Again,
Don't forget
also,
though, on
go ahead.
locals, Richie, you also opine, you write things and so forth, and so they
Yeah,
have
it's a
a
community.
better communication with you.
It's a community. I mean, as much as I love having memberships on YouTube, it's very difficult for me to communicate directly with them. Locals is more of a community. Absolutely. That's what definitely true. That's a good point. Don't forget, public polling project. I would love to design a project this weekend and get ripping on it. All right. That's already really much of it is already designed. I was just saying, going over what we were doing already. I want to add one of Mark Robert's very, very, very uncomfortable questions because I really do feel that we're living in a society where at least, if not all, but a significant chunk of the Democratic Party is perfectly fine with putting Trump in jail and probably would be okay with giving him the death penalty. I'm not kidding. And it's time to start to explore how radical what is the size of the truly radical element on both sides. And nobody wants to talk about it. I know it's uncomfortable, but it's real. It's real. I know there are Democrats who will cheat and write in ballots that don't belong to them. I know that there are those who don't know their ass from a hole in the ground about Donald Trump, yet they would have no problem putting him in a guillotine right on Pennsylvania Avenue. And it's time we start talking about this because crossing the Rubicon is not a valid enough expression. We're in Banana Republic territory now, and the public's willingness to go along with totalitarianism is always a central question when governments and regimes shift from one state to another, and I don't mean state as in like a state, I mean state of being. This is a free state of being. This is a state of nature. This is a totalitarian state. That's where we're at now. We're shifting to totalitarianism. I'm sorry. We are. We're not, oh, it's a banana republic. We're headed toward banana. No, folks, we're in a banana republic. The leading candidate for the president of the United States is being threatened with the rest of his life in jail and possibly the death penalty because he questioned the outcome of an election. Meanwhile, we literally have the norm in our capital selling secrets, selling policy, selling the interests of Americans, selling them out for millions of dollars of wealth. That's the norm. That's a banana republic. So I'm sorry, but that's where we are. And someone's going to have to start asking these uncomfortable questions, and it's going to be me. No one else has the gall to do it, no doubt. All right, but I bet you once we do, we're going to open the floodgates. And others will join us. Just like others have begun. Did you guys hear it on Newsmax the other day? It's like a nightly primetime thing now. Trump or bust. They follow.
It's always
You
hard
lead,
to be the
they'll
leader,
follow.
baby.
That's what I just
always
said. You know,
hard.
you lead, people will follow. Laura,
Mhm.
that's human nature. You know, that's just the elements of human nature.
They
All
just
right.
need a leader.
They just need a leader. Everybody have a good weekend. We had no music on the way in, so we could leave enough time for questions, but now we have music on the way out. Nothing but love for you. Have a good, safe weekend, and we will see you, book club Sunday, the rest of you on locals every day. And you know, inside the numbers. We'll see you on Monday for What Are the Odds. You know it. Later, folks.
Deuces.
Stay safe. Deuces.